They were meant to march to Jerusalem. They carried the banner of the cross, sworn to liberate the Holy Land from the grip of the infidel. But they never reached it. Instead, they turned their swords on fellow Christians, looted the greatest city in Christendom, and crowned their conquest with fire and betrayal. Why? Why did the Fourth Crusade, called by the Pope himself, end not in Jerusalem, but in the smoking ruins of Constantinople? For centuries, historians blamed greed, ambition, and politics. But hidden in Vatican archives and buried letters lies a darker possibility. What if the Pope knew what would happen? What if the chaos, the bloodshed, the desecration was exactly what he wanted? This is the untold story of secret orders, false piety, and a crusade that never intended to save Jerusalem, but to destroy something far more threatening to Rome. The year was 1198. Pope Innocent III, barely 37, had just ascended the throne of St. Peter. Young, brilliant, and unshakably convinced of papal supremacy, he sought to restore what he saw as the divine order of Christendom, with the Pope at its head, not just spiritually but politically. The Holy Land had slipped from Christian control after the disastrous Battle of Hattin in 1187. The Third Crusade, led by kings like Richard the Lionheart, had failed to reclaim Jerusalem. It was a wound on Christendom's pride, and Innocent saw in it both danger and opportunity. He called for a new crusade, but this time, he did not want kings. He didn't trust them. Instead, he appealed directly to knights, nobles, and churchmen, those who could be molded, manipulated, and controlled. He sent out letters across Europe urging the faithful to take up the cross. And behind closed doors, he chose a trusted few to guide this crusade, not warriors, but clerics and papal agents loyal only to him. The plan seemed pure, but from the start it reeked of contradiction. The Crusaders gathered in Venice. They had arranged with the Venetian Doge Enrico Dandolo to transport their army to Egypt, Innocent's preferred entry point into the Holy Land. But when the time came to pay the Venetians, the Crusaders were short. Dandolo, blind and ancient but cunning, offered them a bargain. Help him recapture the rebellious city of Zara, Christian Zara, and he would forgive their debt. It was an unthinkable proposition. Christians attacking Christians under the banner of Christ. Pope Innocent was furious, or so he claimed. He sent a letter forbidding the attack. But strangely, that letter arrived late. Very late. Too late to stop the siege. Zara fell. His churches burned. And for the first time, the crusade had veered off course. The Pope excommunicated the Crusaders, temporarily. And then, just as mysteriously, he lifted the excommunication. It was a pattern that would repeat. Sin followed by forgiveness. Violence followed by silence. Then came the real turning point. A Byzantine prince in exile, Alexios Angelos, approached the Crusaders with an offer. His father had been deposed in Constantinople. If they helped him reclaim the throne, he would reward them handsomely: money, ships, and the unification of the Eastern Orthodox Church with Rome. To many knights, this was blasphemy. The crusade had become a mercenary campaign. But for others, especially the papal envoys, it was an irresistible opportunity. The Pope's official position? Outrage. But again, his letters of condemnation arrived after the action had already begun. Again, his punishments were symbolic. And again, his silence spoke louder than his words. In 1203, the Crusaders reached Constantinople, a city of marble, mosaics, and relics. A jewel of the Christian world, richer and older than Rome itself. When the Crusaders first entered the city, they claimed it was to restore the rightful emperor. But that emperor, Alexios IV, quickly became a liability. He could not pay the promised gold. The people hated him, and the tension between the Latin West and Greek East, cultural, religious, political, exploded. In April 1204, the Crusaders stormed Constantinople. For 3 days they looted, burned, raped, and desecrated. They smashed centuries-old icons. They melted down golden chalices. They slaughtered Christians in the name of Christ. It was one of the most devastating sacks in history, and it was done not by Muslim invaders but by fellow believers under a red cross. Rome reacted with shock. But did it? Behind the scenes, Innocent III wrote letters expressing horror. But he also welcomed the submission of the Eastern Church. He granted indulgences to those who fought, and when his legates in the East began carving up Byzantine lands, he offered only faint protest. Was this his plan all along? Some historians believe the Pope wanted Constantinople humbled. The Eastern Church had long resisted Rome's authority. It rejected papal supremacy. It was a rival, not a partner. By supporting a crusade that accidentally dismantled Byzantium, Innocent removed his greatest theological opponent, without ever lifting a sword. He condemned the violence, but accepted the outcome. He punished the perpetrators, and then absolved them. He denied responsibility, but benefited from every broken altar and looted relic. Innocent's legacy would forever be tied to this paradox. A pope who preached holiness, but presided over horror. The Fourth Crusade never reached Jerusalem, but in the eyes of some, it succeeded. It reshaped the balance of Christian power. It weakened the East. It elevated Rome. And if that was the Pope's true goal, then every act of betrayal, every drop of Christian blood, was not a failure. It was obedience. 1,000 years later, the Vatican still holds letters from this period. Some published, others not. And among them are curious omissions. Missing dates, sealed communications, sudden changes of tone. Did the Pope give secret orders? Did he instruct his legates to steer the crusade toward Constantinople all along? We may never know, but history is not just what happened. It's what was allowed to happen, and sometimes what was designed to happen. The Fourth Crusade stands as a monument to this truth. Not a holy war, but a holy deception. And behind it, not a failure of leadership, but perhaps its darkest success.